Alright guys, well today is the beginning of a project, as you might be able to tell. So this is my 1998 Honda Accord. You can see it's jacked up in the air. I've had this car for a few years. It was my mom's. I've done quite a few videos on it, but you guys actually haven't seen this car in about a year and a half. But today that is going to change. And over here you might also tell that this is my other 1998 Honda Accord. I just bought this one a couple of weeks ago for the sole purpose of using this car for this one's 5-speed manual swap. So that is what we are going to be starting today. I have a friend, my longtime friend and viewer Jack, is going to be coming down tomorrow and staying with me for about a week to help me knock this out. But for today, I just decided to get started, do the easy stuff. And tomorrow night he will be here so we can actually get started then. But till then, I'm just going to do everything that I know how to do. I know my way around a car pretty well, but I'm also kind of an idiot, so I'm going to wait to do all of the heavy stuff, changing the transmissions and such until he gets here. But in the meantime, I've just been knocking out some stuff. I pretty much started with getting the center console stuff removed, so these are all the parts that are going to be going into this car, and it's kind of a mishmash of parts between the two cars. You can see if I go over to our 5-speed Accord here, the center console is completely ripped out, and is going to be, obviously, the shift linkage and such is going to be transplanted into this one. There's my dog. What's up, Lucas? What are you doing? Anyways, I pretty much just put all the parts that I'm going to be throwing into the car here, which obviously is the 5-speed center console, the shift knob. These two are from this car. The center console and actually, yeah, so just this center console piece is from that car because the clip was broken on the one that came out of this car, and this center top piece is also from this car because it's in much better condition. But anyways, that's all I've really been doing thus far. I think these are just the junk parts over here. The console out of this car had a CD changer in it, but I just cut the wire and removed it because I have a nice Pioneer touchscreen unit in there now, so it wasn't going to work anyways. So what's cool about that is we'll actually have room in the center console now. Unlike before. But all I've done other than that, I'll show you in here, same deal. I just got the dash pieces and stuff off, so very beginning stages. But got the wheels off of the fronts of these cars, and I'm getting ready to go ahead and remove the front bumper from this one because I have some new headlights going in here because these are all oxidized and whatever. So I just bought another pair of like black housing eBay lights, and we're going to be putting those in. The one over here, of course, I haven't really done too much with it yet. The plan is, before my friend Jack gets here tomorrow, I'm going to have all the easy stuff done. So I'm going to pull the bumper off because I need to get the transmission cooler out as well that I put in there. I'm going to drain all of the fluids, and then the idea is to get them stripped down enough to the point where we can pretty much pull the transmission out, and that's all stuff I can handle. So I'm going to remove the radiator, both hoses, the battery, the intake, manifold, and such, this evap tank and whatever, and then that is going to be about it. But if I can drain all the fluids and do that to both cars, then we'll be in much better shape to go ahead and start the actual swap once my friend gets here. So something I noticed is if we look in here, you can see that we have an ABS module in the way of the shift linkage here, and that uses Torx bits, so I'm gonna have to find a way to get some of those, but I think my dad might have some. Anyways, yeah, that's got to come out. That's about it. So anyways, I will report when I have more stuff to talk about. Alright, a little update. So I got the radiator, the hoses, the starter, the intake, and that is about it out of the green Accord here. So I think that's about all I'm going to be able to do for now until my friend gets here because I can't drop this thing myself. But yeah, I got the shifter cables loose. Those are going to be interesting because they go under the intake manifold and back under that exhaust shield down there. So that is going to be interesting to get out. But I'm hoping we don't have to remove the intake manifold to do that. Should just be able to remove the rear mount and get it out that way. But anyways, that is about as far as I can get here. And over here, I got the bumper and the headlights out. Just going to leave it like that just to minimize the chance of the paint getting scratched and whatnot. So I'm pretty much going to replicate that over here. I'm going to get all this stuff out of here. And that's going to be about it for today. Not really sure what I'm going to do tomorrow if I get all that done today, but I suppose I could try to get the shifter cables out tomorrow because I do need a Torx bit to get that ABS module out on both of these. But yeah, that's a little update for now. If I go over here towards the hill, we can see that we got some parts. So I've just been putting the spare parts over here. We got the headlights here, the bottom pans here, and then here's some of the stuff that came out of the green one. But yeah, you can see this starter is crunchy and original, so I'm glad I'm replacing it. Probably gonna need this bracket and the little nuts and bolts off of it, but for now I just put it here, make it easy to get to. And yeah, so I am going to just continue working on this and we will see where we get. Alright boys, and the one girl watching this, I am calling it a night. So, got pretty decent amount of stuff done. I left off with that one being pretty much stripped down. I also did a couple more things though. I got the shifter cables off, which was interesting, and I was just kind of poking around and seeing how those were put in there. And obviously I made sure to save the end pieces for the bushings and clean them up with brake cleaner. These are all pretty nasty, so I went ahead and took them out, but it just has this metal washer and then a plastic one in between. And then of course there's cotter pins, which I bought a completely new set of cotter pins at Harbor Freight, so we're going to be replacing those obviously, and we're going to need them for the axles and stuff. But anyhow, this one is about as far along as I want to by myself, so pretty much just going to be waiting for my friend Jack to get here to continue. And did the same thing over here, got the radiator hoses, the starter, the intake manifold, all of the plugs on the transmission, got those undone. You can see that they're down there. Sorry, it's kind of dark over here. I'm pretty well far along as I can by myself, but I think tomorrow I'm going to work on getting the shifter cables completely out of the car. They do snake underneath the intake manifold, so that's going to be interesting to see how those come out, but I think it's possible. There seems to be enough room down there, but we'll see. I'm going to try to do that tomorrow, and same over here. This one looks quite a bit easier because the shifter cable on the auto, you might be able to see it right down there, that thing right there. That is the shift cable, and that just goes to the bottom of the transmission. So that's going to be a little bit easier than this one, I think. So that is about it. Something I wanted to mention, just for you Honda guys out there, went ahead and drained the manual here, and I found out that for the drain plug on the manual transmission, it's the exact same size as the oil pan drain plug. So that's pretty sweet. I bought a pack of 100 of these a long time ago, so I just threw a new one on there. And I have a new washer, I believe, for the fill plug in the box of parts that I haven't shown yet, but we won't need those for a couple of days. Anyhow, I think that's about it. I've already told you guys what I plan to do tomorrow, so another observation you might be able to tell is that the manual transmission is quite a bit smaller than the automatic. Of course, it makes sense, but that should mean that putting the manual in and taking it out is going to be easy. Of course, moving the automatic might be a little bit more difficult, but I think we can get it done. All we got to do is remove 3 of these engine mounts, support the engine with a jack, and then obviously pull the transmission out. So stay tuned for that. That's not going to be happening tomorrow, but probably the day after. Another thing I want to do tomorrow, obviously, is to degrease some of this stuff. So before we take it out, now that it's kind of out in the open, I bought a can of engine degreaser over here, and so I'm going to be probably spraying the crap out of both of these things because they're both pretty crusty in there. This one was steam cleaned a couple years ago, so it's not too bad, but this one is very crusty, so I wanted to make this look a little bit better. And then of course when we drop the transmission all the way out, I'm going to probably pressure wash it and make it look really nice, but for the sake of staying cleaner when we pull them out, that's probably what I'm going to do. But anyways, that is where I'm going to leave you guys for today. Got pretty far along, like I said, and yeah, see you tomorrow. Alright, it is now the second day. As you can see here, we have 2 instrument clusters. So this one obviously being from the automatic car, the blue one here, and the other one being from the 5-speed. So what I want to do is I want to have the manual gauge cluster. You can see that on the manual, obviously, there's no range selector because, yeah, so I want that, but I also want my correct mileage. So I did some research, and turns out you can supposedly just swap the instrument cluster board itself and then leave the front fascia alone. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do here. We will see how it goes, I suppose. And then there's going to be some wiring involved for the VSS later in this swap, but obviously we're going to cross that bridge when we get to it. So anyhow, I'm going to try to dig into these things and see where we get. Alrighty boys, we pulled it off. As you can see, I now have this cluster is out of the blue car, and it now does not have a pernal in the cluster. So I'm really glad that I started with the parts car cluster because there was no guides on how this stuff goes together because, you know, it's an old car and whatnot. I couldn't find anything on Google about it, but I eventually figured out that these gauge pods kind of just pop off of these pegs on the circuit board. So I was able to just take this guy off. So basically, here's how it looks. So we have two servo motors here. Those pop into there like that. And then obviously the faceplate is in front of it. So what I did is I just popped this out. This is the bad one. This is from this gauge cluster. But anyways, I popped this out, pulled the needles off, which was a big mistake in the beginning because I wasn't too sure what to do. So I figured it might have been like my friend Chris's Corolla, where you have to remove the needles to pull them out. But I pulled the needles off and kind of just let them sit for 5 or 10 minutes while I screwed with this thing. And I'm pretty sure that screwed up the servo motor. So anyways, what I did to replicate that is I was just extremely careful with the cluster that I need, which is this one here. And I just did the exact same process of removing the needles and this gauge pod here. But I was a lot more careful about it. I took a picture of exactly where the gauges were sitting at, and I just swapped these faceplates out. So I took the needles off, put the manual faceplate on it, i.e. this one, and then put the needles back on, and it seems to be working just fine. Now, I said I messed up this one, and the reason that I think that is because I put the needle back on the first time, and I noticed the gauge was just being really weird. Like, it wasn't sitting at full cold like this one is, and it also wasn't like a hard stop. So, I'm pretty sure I messed up the servo motor, but again, this is a parts car, so I don't care. The bottom line is I was able to do it and have one completely functional gauge cluster without the range selector switch. So that is one part down for this. Alright, so as you can see, we are under the car. See, I'm in the process of removing this shift cable. Now, I have the service manual for this car, so that was a benefit for me, but most of you probably won't. So, to remove the shifter cable, it took a little bit of, looking in the service manual, like I said. I initially thought that, let's see, where is it? This clip mounts onto this plastic thing here, and I initially thought this was, the part that held it on, but that obviously was not it. So, what you gotta do is there's this plate here that covers the transmission shifter cable like this. You gotta remove that, and then there is obviously the shifter cable itself here that connects to this little lever down here, and that is connected by just a single 10mm bolt with a like locking tab style device. I don't know if you could consider this a cotter pin, but there you go. So you just have to pound those down and remove that 10mm bolt, and then the shift cable comes free. So then we have to remove this dust cover from the exhaust and then just pull the cables through the interior. Alright, little update. Got the automatic shifter completely out of the car here, and I also decided to clean up the center console a little bit. So that is ready to go. I also finished removing the manual shifter. You can see that she's gone. So here it is. Here's the 5-speed shifter. Let's go and start with the auto one first. So I did explain how to remove this shifter cable here, and that was basically it. It's just 4 bolts and then it just pops right out. This one was actually a little bit easier to get out compared to the manual, because I ended up having to remove a couple of brackets to get it through, because not only are there 2 cables which take up more space, but there's also this bracket here that goes like this, and that mounts to the subframe and holds the cables in place. Now, I'm hoping that there's bolt holes on this car. I haven't checked yet, but I'm pretty sure there is, because nobody's ever mentioned anything about that. But anyhow, had to remove that to get it through the little hole in the center console, and I was able to get the ABS module out on this car. Just moved it out of the way, as you can see, so I was able to have enough room to pull it out that little hole. Now, unfortunately, on the blue car, there is some corrosion in the center console a little bit, and so I wasn't really able to remove the ABS module because this bolt right here would not come out. But like I said, I was able to get the other one out, and now that I've taken the bracket off, I can just slide it in and then put the bracket on from underneath the car, and it'll be fine. So that is about it. I think I'm going to go ahead and put the 5-speed shifter in here and just let the cables dangle for now, because obviously the transmission and stuff still has to come out. Something also, I don't think I'm going to attempt to do this today, at least I'm not planning on it, but the ECU is back there, and that has to come out as well, because we're going to need the 5-speed ECU. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. I'm just going to start cleaning up these parts, and then I will start throwing everything in this car that I can. Now, something also I'd like to mention is that the shifter cables on the transmission have these little pins here, and they mount to this plate right here, which bolts to the transmission that holds the shifter cables in place. You don't have to, but I found it easier to go ahead and remove this bracket because it is kind of underneath the thermostat there. So it was quite a bit easier to remove these little C-clips here with this bracket off. And you might also notice down there, that is the VSS. I have a brand new one of those ready to go in. That is going to need to be rewired because the automatic has an input and an output sensor, which this one does not, but that's going to be later in the swap when the 5-speed is actually in the car. The plan is to get all the mechanical stuff done. Probably going to be doing that tomorrow, which will be part 2, and then we'll worry about the wiring for the VSS and the VTEC stuff. But anyhow, that is where I'm at right now. I'm going to go ahead and slap the 5-speed shifter in the car and go from there. Alright guys, so got the 5-speed shifter mounted inside the blue Accord here. I just let the cables dangle under the car for now because we still got to drop the trans, but they're out of the way, so that's cool. Also made sure that those bolt holes for that bracket that holds the cable on was in the subframe on this car, and they are, so that's perfect. It's just going to bolt up. That is about all I can really do for now. I've got the gauge cluster and the shifter in the car, so that's good. And let's see, the only other thing I decided to do was kind of do a half cruise control delete, because this car, being an automatic, had a slightly different cruise control system, and it had a big vacuum tank here. I pretty much never use cruise control, especially in this car, so I decided to just replicate what we had over here on the 5-speed, which is a little bit different. It's not going to work, but I just wanted to make sure that, I just wanted that canister out of there because it looks bad. And I might actually remove the motor later, but we'll see. I think for now I'll just leave it like this. But yeah, so that's out of the way. This hose I got to replace, but anyways, that's all done. And yeah, that's about all I can really think of. I went ahead and cleaned up the shifter cable mount bracket thingy, so that's significantly less dirty than it was. I think that's gonna about wrap it up for this part 1 video, guys. Stay tuned because part 2 is coming very soon, and we will be getting into the actual fun stuff very soon. But thank you guys for watching this part 1, and I will see you in the next video.